Hey everybody, welcome to Go to Your Room and Make Stuff, the podcast about making art, any kind of art, all by ourselves in a room or a studio, maybe outside. No one is telling us when, where, or how, or any combination of those things. This is a podcast for solo artistic adventurers, those who are doing it and those who want to try it. Support, ideas, and just plain fun. Hey there, welcome. Today I will be interviewing Michael Gettel. Very special guest. I have known Michael about 40 years, since I was in his music class at Kent-Denver Country Day School. I'm going to read his bio from his website. He's fantastic, and I have been admiring his work forever. So this is all about Michael. Michael Gettel imagines endless beautiful landscapes in his mind and heart, and then creates music that transports us all to them. A 30-plus veteran and an award-winning and gold record-achieving pianist, producer, and composer. His career spans 13 albums to date that defy style, genre, and approach. A resident of Colorado, that's where I met him. I met him in Denver. This beautiful natural environment has been an endless source of inspiration for Michael. His latest album, The View from Here, was his first album in almost 15 years. After years of being part of the legendary stable of artists at Narada in the 1990s, Michael is now ready to chart a new musical course as an ageless creative spirit, ready to create the next chapter of gorgeous musical journeys. Michael and I talked in May. So when you hear him reference snow outside, and you might be listening to this in the Seattle heat or wherever you're listening from, and it's like in the 90s, this was a few months back. Michael also lived in Seattle. So in case you know the name Michael Gettel, he taught at the Bush School in Seattle as well. So we've crossed paths several times in our journeys. So with that, welcome, Michael Gettel. So Michael Gettel, thank you so much for being here. We go way back, like way back to like the mid 80s.
That's right. That's right. All the way back to Kent-Denver. At that point, it was called Kent-Denver Country Day School.
Have they changed the name?
It's now just Kent-Denver School.
Okay, so my mom was the librarian the year that I was in 7th grade. And so I used to hang out in the library for like 5th grade, but I was there and I was in your music class in 7th grade.
That is so cool. And yeah, I remember we were talking about me introducing the class to Jesus Christ Superstar. And then the following year with that same class, I introduced The Wall. And we did a long investigation on that whole album and the storyline behind it and all of the inferences and how how different characters spoke to different people. And it was just almost like a sociology course as much as it was a music course. But the amazing thing about teaching The Wall was I've been a teacher. I'm retired now, but I've been a teacher for 38 years. And every single one of those years, I have taught The Wall to 7th grade students.
Oh, that's so cool.
It is. And it's an amazing album to introduce young people to.
I knew about your music. You introduced me to Pippin, and the musical Pippin, which was that year in 7th grade, was the year I fell in love with musical theater. And so that was incredibly inspiring. And I also, what I really loved was the song Corner to the Sky.
I know.
Yeah. And so that learning to play that is how I ended up in piano, which is how I ended up singing. So I have to personally thank you for because there's a question I like to ask people is who inspired you? But if people interviewed me, I go, Michael Gettel.
Oh, that's so dear. Thank you. I'm honored. That's the best part about being a teacher is having those connections with kids and realizing maybe 40 years later that you actually had more of an impact than maybe you assumed. Right. And that's really I'm just so grateful that I can enjoy that with you.
And for years, I've loved your music and your albums because Michael has 13 albums.
Yeah.
And the one that I found, we were stuck on San Juan Island. And if you've never been to the San Juan Islands, getting stuck there is very easy because the ferry does not always run when it's supposed to. Yeah. And so for years, but performing, I was like, oh, we can't go to San Juan's. We might get stuck. Well, we were stuck. And I found your album, the San Juan Suite. And it was all solo piano. So it's all I wanted to play all the time. And then the most recent album is also one that I think is just it's pretty much on replay. I just play.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about that in a while. I have a funny anecdote about the San Juans. And when I recorded San Juan Suite, it kind of went through a couple of incarnations, I guess you could say. And the first one was just a little tiny cassette with 6 songs on it. And my partner and I, who we would always boat in the San Juans in the summers. And it was not a sailboat by far. It was this little tiny motorboat that we kind of slept on and all that stuff. But it was tiny for the sound. But anyway, I made these 6 songs that was inspired there, and we took it around to gift shops, which is where you bought it,
Yep.
and they kind of went, "Yeah, we might have a market for this." So I went back into the studio and recorded, I think, 9 songs, and did this little, very homegrown kind of cassette cover and all that stuff. And we started sending it out to all these gift shops. And before you knew it, there were orders of 100, orders of 500, orders of
Yeah.
1,000. And we couldn't keep up with it. And then, of course, the CD market was starting to come into play. This was,
Okay.
something like that. And so I decided, well, it's time to re-record it again, and we'll do it to CD. And I recorded it at Bad Animals, which is no longer
No, but I got to
in.
stand in those halls.
I
Oh,
know, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I recorded there a couple of times. I recorded Someone's Seat there, and then a couple of singles for Narada. But so it went out on CD, and then of course the sky blew off the top of it, and we were selling literally thousands of CDs out of a garage for a couple of summers. And I think we probably covered over 500,000 copies. That can't be, no one can say that it happened or it didn't, but I know it happened. So it's a pretty exciting way to start a career.
Oh, and then, so I guess my question would be for Narada, like when was the shift into Narada?
Okay, that I was into I had done 3 albums independently on Sounding Records, which is what we called it. And San Juan Suite basically funded the albums that came. There was one in between San Juan Suite and the one that Narada picked up, which is Return.
Yeah.
And that is the one where they got very interested, along with 2 other labels. And so I had to make a decision about, okay, am I going to take this big plunge and go with a major label in hopes of getting more distribution, which is the reason I did it ultimately, or should I just stay local and do my own little thing? And I was just afraid that it would dry up ultimately without some kind of a bigger machine working it
Yeah.
and funding it, for that matter.
Yeah.
But the funny part is, siding with Narada is, we were talking earlier, and you were saying how we went on camping trips and we did this thing and that thing when you were going to Kent Denver, and I was your
Yes.
teacher there. Well, 3 record labels were vying for my, they wanted me to sign. And I finally got tired of all of it. And I just said, I'm not signing anything. I'm going on a 2-week Southwest trip with students, and I'm going to think about all of it. The day before we left, I basically sent an email to Narada, and I said, I will go with you, but I expect to see a contract faxed to me at Arches National, or it was Zion National Park,
Zion. Okay.
so I can read it and then decide. And so when we showed up to Zion, like 5 days later, the ranger letting us in, they said, "Are you Michael Gettel?" After, and he hands me like 50 pages of faxes.
At least it's a beautiful place to review all the
Oh
paperwork.
my gosh. So that was actually a very funny thing. And they actually did it. So I thought, well, if they're going to do this, then, maybe this is going to work out. And so it actually did for quite a long time.
Yeah. And so the latest album, did you produce this one? There's a whole bunch of years in here and all of that. And you're back in Colorado because you were in
Yes.
Seattle for some years, and now you're back in. And I grew up in Denver, where I
Yeah.
met you, but you are in
My gosh, we are in the oldest town in Colorado. It's southern western Colorado, about 15 miles north of the New Mexico border.
Okay.
And it's a town called San Luis.
San
And
Luis.
and there's I think in the whole region that San Luis is, there's probably about 600 people. And it is tiny, tiny. And beautiful beyond words.
What's
I
your
mean,
elevation?
8,000.
Okay, 8,000 feet. Woo! Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
High desert.
we just had snow a little bit the other day, and I've got an entire front walkway in our entrance space with flowers waiting to be planted. Yeah. And so
Right.
I've had them for a week, and I'm just kind of, come on.
When we
But
left Denver, it snowed that May. 2
is that
feet.
right? Yeah. I'm not
2 feet. Yeah.
surprised.
Mhm.
That's hysterical. So yeah, San Luis, and we love it here. I retired from teaching here at the local school, and it's just a really wonderful place to be inspired. Which is where The View from Here, my latest record, that's where all this was written in a
Okay.
matter of a month.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
no,
ask you that. So the podcast is called "Go to Your Room and Make Stuff." I have
yeah.
2 rooms. I have this room and I have one upstairs. Where do you do your composing?
Well, it really depends. I mean, if I moved this way, you might see a blue lamp. I
Okay.
don't know.
I see
Can you
some
see it?
lamps back there. I'm not sure it's blue. Yeah, I mostly see. No, I don't know.
Or
We see the chair mostly. There we go. Oh, I see the gorgeous lamp. Yeah. It's a really pretty one.
anyway, that's my piano, and over in this corner there are two pianos. There's my Yamaha, and then there's my wife Elizabeth Nacarado, who is
Yeah.
also a recording artist. She has a Steinway in the corner, and so they
Ooh.
just kind of get nestled like this. That right now is my studio. Something that I would tell your listeners when you talk about go to your room and make stuff, that piano literally is my studio. I have no computers, I have no electronic keyboards, I have nothing but that piano and a bunch of blank manuscript paper and a pencil. That's what I do. And I
Yeah.
sit there and I will think of ideas, and then I will literally write it out by hand on manuscript paper. And so for anyone listening that says, how can I possibly start this? I don't have the money to get that or get this or whatever. All you need is an instrument, just one. And I know tons of people in the industry who have studios that are bedecked with 25 keyboards and a piano and high tech audio and all of it. And I've never been that kind of a person. I've always composed from the piano. Every single melody, every counter melody, every arrangement comes from one keyboard, and that's the piano.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's where the music comes from. It's where it go.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
when you do your recording, did you handle your tech then, or did you bring in a crew of people? How do you handle
well,
that piece?
of course, we could talk for hours, you know that. The first album I actually recorded for Narada was done in Portland, and then subsequently I was given full reign to do the rest of my albums, to produce them and all that stuff.
Good.
So I moved, Skywatching was this project. I
Yeah.
moved that record to, with the help of the label, to a local recording studio in North Seattle, Richmond Beach,
Yeah.
specifically called Robert Lang Studios.
Yes.
And that's the studio that essentially, with Bad Animals, I suppose, that's the studio that made Seattle famous for grunge. And it was a little
Yeah.
hole in the wall, and everyone from, Heart included,
Yes.
to Nirvana, and all of the players up in Seattle, as you well know, maybe by living there, and they all recorded there.
They
And
did.
so I was one of the first kind of not grungy kind of a person to go in there and record. And I have the same sound engineer that recorded that album has recorded with me all through the 90s. And in spite of a huge a block of time that nothing happened recording wise, we're still, he came back and we recorded in the very same place, The View from Here, 15 years later. So,
Awesome.
and that little tiny studio has turned into this gigantic underground campus.
Hmm.
And it's got a sound stage for a full orchestra now. It's got everything you could imagine. It's 3 stories tall. It's just, and it's all built underground with this house on the top of it. So you have no idea it's there.
Yeah, I would say I haven't been to that one. I've heard of it.
You need to Google it and drive
Okay.
by. And you'll,
I have recorded at Bad Animals. It was Microsoft. Sexual
nice.
harassment stuff. It was, but
Oh,
but I have
fabulous.
recorded there.
That's great. The one
Yeah,
time I was at Bad Animals, I was recording a single for Narada. The tech there was Reed Reddy, and he was one of the standouts. Do you know Reed?
I know that name.
Oh,
Yes.
that's crazy. Anyway, we kind of walked around and all that stuff and went into Studio X, and Hart was recording uh, Baby Lestrange, I think, or Sweet Darling
Okay.
was the song, and it was Anne's writing. She'd written out the lyrics, and it was still on the music stand.
Oh, how cool
And I
is
was just
that?
like, "You're kidding! That's so cool!" Yeah, super fun.
Oh, that's awesome. What does a day look like for you as a composer? You taught for a long time.
Right. You know what's fun about, uh, I guess, finally getting to a place as a person who's somewhat a common name, at least in this genre that I'm in. You kind of don't have to worry about always pushing yourself to be heard or scream for people to get to give you attention or anything. I'm old enough to not even give a what about any of that, and so I just kind of work when I want to work, and it's not a hobby. It's not. It's something that when I push the mind button that says play or record,
Yeah.
then I'm all over it. And if it's months in between or even longer, that's fine. But what I
Mm,
tend to do, and listeners who are uh, just playing around with a guitar, with piano or keyboards or anything, or voice,
hmm.
just use your phone and record it on video. Or there's certain apps like Voice Recorder. You probably know about that one. Anyway, start getting a list of all of your ideas. And
Mm,
then if you don't feel like you have enough creative juices at the time, at least your idea is there. And so generally what I do is I'll record any idea that I've got. And then even like the view from here, there was an idea on there that was probably 10 years old, but I'd never done anything with it. And I only had like four measures of an idea. And then so I thought, well, I love that little thing, so I'm going to work with it. But that's what people should do. They should just keep an audio diary of all of the stuff that they really feel creative about.
mm, yeah. Idea capture.
Yeah, for sure.
And did you
Yeah.
have mentors? Were there people that got you started?
I saw that question, and
Yeah.
I'm really not stymied, but I guess I have a certain perspective about what a mentor is.
Okay.
It's like I think mentors can be a person that is in your life over a period of time, that's inspired you over time, whether it's a parent or two parents or
Mm,
anything like that. But and so yeah, I have those kind of mentors. I have musical mentors. I've got life mentors. But
hmm.
I also believe that mentors can be they have a shelf life, and sometimes a mentor is only in your life for 5 minutes, but they've done something in that 5 minutes that has so impacted you, whether it was a gesture of kindness, whatever that 5 minutes was. That person is a mentor, and I think it's kind of cool to be able to redefine what the word mentor is. And
Yeah.
like we were talking before we recorded about me inspiring you when you were in seventh grade,
Yeah.
and at a point in your life, I was a mentor to you,
Absolutely.
and so it had a beginning, it had a middle, and it had somewhat of an end. But thank God, here we are, 40 something years later, and we're talking on a
Right.
podcast that you are doing, which is nothing but full circle and beautiful in every possible way.
Oh, thank you for that. This podcast is brought to you by the Seattle Voice Academy, and your host runs the podcast and the Seattle Voice Academy. This online voice school specializes in vocal health, singing, voiceover, and public speaking. Come check us out, seattlevoiceacademy.com. Yeah, thank you. Do you have discouraging days? And on those days, what do you do?
Well, I am a classic introvert, and I'm also an empath. And I don't know how you feel about the Myers Briggs tests and all that cool stuff. I think it's fascinating.
I know a lot about it. So does my daughter, by the way.
Okay, well, I happen to be a special one. I happen to be an INFJ.
So is my daughter.
No
Highly
kidding.
rare, by the
And
way.
even more rare for males. But anyway, so there's really not a lot that discourages me because
Okay.
our house is brimming with energy, with color, with art, with music. I'm a lamp collector as well as a vinyl collector, and the house is just stimulating.
Okay.
So you can look out, if I were to look that way, there's a bunch of 14ers peaks that
Those
are
are
now
mountains. For
covered
those of you
in.
not from Colorado, those are all
Yeah,
14,000-foot peak mountains.
there
Yes.
you go, there you go. But there's a couple of 14ers over here right outside our window, and I can sit in my comfortable chair and just watch the sunset over
Ooh.
these 14ers, and it's just a stimulating place. So I have to say there are really very few discouraging days I have. I really think so. And I think gratitude is what keeps
Mm.
you from having discouraging days, because you can't, you can't, I can't wake up and not be grateful for everything we have. We're also dog lovers, and we have the perfect pity. And
Ooh.
her name is Pearl, and she brings so much joy into her life.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I'm home
nice.
with them all day too. So they
I
are
know.
my creative companion.
That's for sure,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
sometimes they actually get involved, don't they?
They
Yeah.
are created during directed sessions. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
There
Otherwise,
you go.
they're out and about.
Yeah. Well, Pearl has found a squeaky toy, so she may possibly come over and say hello. I don't know.
Totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in terms of critiques, opinions, social media, I'm really curious of your opinion on that because you have had a career over such a wide span.
Right.
Back when the reviews were in a magazine versus,
Online.
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, online. Well, I was always kind of fortunate. I think people that really took this book to heart and tried to understand the complexities of what somebody's trying to do, because they're really at this point it's such a weird genre. I don't even, new instrumental, new acoustic, new age, whatever the new thing is, it's not new anymore. People have been doing it for 50 more
Yeah.
some odd years. But the thing, there's all these different cross sections. Like now that it's become so easy in a sense to really, you can record in your basement and release it on Bandcamp, and
Yeah.
boom,
Yes.
and so there are a lot of pianists specifically that are kind of DIY, do it yourself artists. And, they have a whole different struggle in a way. But when you were kind of, I guess you could say, in the major leagues, and you were being compared to all of the people that were recording at that time, people tended to like what I did. I didn't necessarily care if they didn't.
Right.
I remember it's really super funny. There was, and I usually don't let anything bother me. And you were saying when you get negative reviews, well, there was this Italian, I don't website, I guess, and it was run by this one dude who all he did was review as much music as possible. Not even, I mean,
Okay.
everything from Michael Gettel to Nirvana to whatever, and he
Okay.
had nothing good to say about anybody.
Oh,
And
jeez.
so
That was
nothing,
his
he
shtick.
hated, and
Okay.
it was almost like his shtick. Like
Yeah.
if I just bomb everybody, people are going to enjoy reading this. Which I digress. Hi, Pearl. I found, I guess somehow on Google or whatever, I found this website because it said Michael blah blah blah, and then there was a word next to it like mediocre.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm
Yep.
like, I gotta check that out. And so I read it, and it was just horrifying. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna talk to you. So I send him this email, and we had this email exchange about, what's your point? I mean, what's your point? And if it were just me and you didn't like my stuff, that's fine. But you're doing it to everybody. Do you get some kind of jollies out of this? Are you an artist? Do you just write terrible reviews for everybody, and that's your thing? And I said what I said, and it was over. And
Right.
I'm like, please just take me off your site. I don't. Nobody needs this, and nobody's reading it anyway. So, but that was super funny.
I like how you well, yeah, I like and did he ever respond did he respond to you or did he
He did respond to the email, and he was like, I think one response I remember was, well, I was nicer to you than most.
Oh, good heavens. Okay, yeah. You know what? That's when you're like, okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I'm just
I
gonna
know
let that.
everything. Oh,
There's
absolutely.
there's a book I changed my name on, an audiobook. My name is not on it, and that one of the one-star review said something like, "I'm glad I listened to it, or I would have stabbed my eyes out with pencils." And I was like, "I think that's a backhanded compliment in there
Yeah,
somewhere."
I
It's still a
bet.
one-star review. Okay, I'm gonna
Oh,
move on
that's
now.
hysterical. Well, I mean, you can't take yourself too seriously.
No, no, I agree.
And honestly, I mean, this is probably a good time to really talk to your listeners about the segment of time that happened when I left the label of Narada, and they were affiliated with Universal Music at that time, and when and the album I released in 2022. So what happened essentially is I had one further record option. When you sign a contract, you have options on it,
Okay.
and I don't know, that might be the same for theater or
A little
even
different. I don't
audio.
know much about this. This is sort of outside my
Yeah, okay.
professional stuff.
So you sign a contract and you have so many options, whether it's three or five or whatever it is. I had a five option contract, and
Okay.
I had just got done doing my fourth option, which was the Journey North. That came out in nine.
Yep.
So about 8 months had passed by, and I called the label and I said, I think I'm ready to jump into the next release. And in 30 seconds, they told me that they weren't renewing my fifth option and that I was free to go. And it was 30 seconds. It was like, hey, I'd like to get going on my next option. Well, we're not renewing your option, so there you go. Click. And that's
Oof.
what it was. And then within probably 2 years of that, Narada went out of business. So
I
they were
remembered
cleaning
that.
house.
Yeah.
And anybody who listens to music, and your listeners would probably, the 2000s were a nightmare for artists and recording labels. It just, the huge universe that was a recording industry shrank really to the size of a pea. And so there were probably, well, everybody in Narada got let go. They could have told me that, but no, they didn't. They
Right.
just made me feel like, what did I do?
Yeah.
And so I was literally stunned, and that really kicked the air out of my chest.
Yeah.
And for quite a while, it was a year or two where I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Besides, I don't have any way that I really can afford to do it on an international level like I was. So why
Right.
am I going to go back and? But anyway, that was a real kind of a huge letdown, obviously. And but the thing is, what you do if you're grateful
Mm-hmm.
is you start looking at different avenues and start saying, well, okay, maybe this store is closed for me at this moment, but I have this store and I have this
Right.
store.
Ooh.
And so I really threw myself into doing a lot of experiential education at the Bush School,
Yeah.
and just thrived for 15 years. They're exploring the world with kids, and producing bands that were just incredible for middle school kid. Super fun. But I always thought, okay, well, what do I do now? And all of these listeners would say, when are you going to record? When are you going to record? And I just thought, I'll do it when I'm ready, if I do it at all. And then it just kind of bit out of the nowhere
Okay.
15 years later. And I just thought, I'm not done. There's this point where you realize I'm not done. So I made one phone call to Bobby Lang's, and it
Okay.
was like, come whenever you want. I called
Okay.
my engineer of literally 30 years. I'll be happy. I'll come whenever you want. And so the rest was for me to go, okay, well, what am I going to compose? And that's when I sat down in the month of April, 3 years ago, and I composed everything on the View from Here. So
It's I'm not a critic, but I'll tell you, I play it endlessly. You guys have
that's
not listened to The View from Here. You need to
it's
because
you
I
know
have it. I love it.
it's really, the composing is incredibly tight, and everything is intentional. Every note is intentional.
Mm.
So yeah, I would.
Parting Glass is
Isn't that
on like
fun?
all of Mike play. Then
Nice.
so is The View from Here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's a cool rendition, I think, because I've never heard it And I'm sure there are versions of it that are instrumental, but I don't know that I've ever heard it instrumental. Have you?
No, I think yours might be the only one because I know it because of, I've heard from it for years. And the Wailing Jennies did it.
Ah,
Maybe, I don't know. That's when I fell in love with it.
yeah.
And I've heard Kathy Ryan do it, and yeah, it's one of the ones I work on. It's a beautiful song.
Oh, it
But
is.
your
It
version
is.
of it, it's also nice to move away from all the harmonies and just let the piano do it.
Yeah,
It's so
and
cool.
that gorgeous melody that's so haunting,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Nice.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
When you are not creating these days, what do you love to do? Obviously, you observe your mountains, but what else do you do when you're not
Well,
creating?
I love to cook.
Okay.
I love to cook. I like to bake things too, dessert kind of things, but I really enjoy cooking and
Ooh.
a lot of things that are super fun to make. But I'm also a gardener,
Okay.
so that's why all of my flowers are still inside, and I'm keeping them warm and watered.
Oh, and of
But
course, both of those are still creative pursuits. We had a chef who we're listening to as well talk about how he goes in the kitchen. That's his and makes
yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that I'm a vinyl collector, and
Yeah.
this is so funny, and I don't know, maybe some of your listeners will key into this too. But we moved from Seattle 8 years ago, and in Seattle, our home there, I did have an enclosed, so I
Okay.
could kind of sit down and listen to any kind of music I wanted and all of that. And when we got here, it's a much bigger home, but there was no enclosed space for the pianos or audio equipment or anything like that. And so it was kind of this blank space where I wasn't really listening to a lot of music so
Okay.
much. And that was so anathema to me. But
Okay.
it wasn't I'm also kind of OCD, and it wasn't in my habits, at all. So, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, Elizabeth had this idea in mind, but she bought me a wireless turntable, and
Ooh.
so it was for the room where actually I'm sitting in now, and I have wireless speakers and all that stuff. And so I was kind of like, I don't. I think that you will give it a try. So I set the thing up, and I got some. I have a lot of vinyl that I've collected over the years from new wave mostly, and Wyndham Hill stuff. I've got all the vintage Wyndham Hill stuff,
Yes.
but new age all the way through the 90s. And so I've got a pretty extensive record collection. And so I brought some records down and I started listening. I'm like, this is really fun. This is really fun. So before you know it, I'm just collecting everything that I had on CD
Yes.
that I gave away because I had a couple thousand CDs, and I just thought there's no way I'm going to take these. I don't want I don't want to give them away, but
Right.
I don't have place to house them. But vinyl's very different for me. It's tactile, it's beautiful, it's a piece of art. And then on top of enjoying the way it's presented, you get to listen to music. So that's really, really lovely. So that's something I do a lot.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. And maybe you've already covered this a little bit, but what advice would you have for young artists or adults who are remembering what it's like to find art?
Well, I think, it's not and I'm just going to speak to music per se, because that's
Yeah.
the only profession that I've really had any kind of connection with in terms of how easy or hard it is to be able to make a living at it. And the first thing I can say is it's not easy, and
Yep.
everybody will tell you that. Um, but you can't let those kind of things stop you. And
Mhm.
first of all, you have to have a desire to express yourself. And, again, we go back to that G word. There's gratitude involved,
Yeah.
and you take it in small steps, and you create your audio diary. You try to flesh it out. If you need help, you go to people that can support you. And I went through college and have a double degree in music theory and composition, never knowing. I mean, it's not like I said, oh, when I graduate, I'm going to be a recording artist. Of course, nobody says that. I
Mm-mm.
dreamt about it when I was in junior high,
Right.
but it's not like I ever thought I would, be able to do that. And the fact of the matter is all you need is determination, good habits in terms of just being passionate about doing it, and then finding the right people to help you just kind of explore and grow. And that's what to young people, I would just say you have to be determined and you have to have perseverance and you have to knock on doors. And I'm not talking about major labels or anything. You just have to work hard to establish your own identity in Spotify or whatever. Bandcamp is a really good place to really try to launch yourself. But to older people, I mean, going back to the fact that, I literally went off a major label when I was 43. And of course, they still sell on my stuff. That's still pretty young in someone's professional life to have that, that sheet pulled out from you or whatever they call it. But the fact that I let it rest and I came back to it at 60. And what do they say? Some of your most productive and artistic years are between 50 and 80 something.
This year. And I'm going to, I mean, that's, yes.
So I believe that too. When everybody thinks it's for the young crowd, and the fact is it's really not.
We have more to draw on. There's a little more life experience to draw on.
Yeah. Well, you and we have professions where you could do voiceovers until you're 95.
Yes, I can.
You
can. Great.
Yeah. And it's like, if you're not beholden to some kind of image that the world expects of you as a recording artist or whatever, I can do this until I'm at 95.
Exactly.
I don't have to stop. And if it takes me it won't, because I already have my ideas for the next record, but however long it takes, it's all good.
Michael, thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough, because I have known you since I was 10.
Oh, I know.
Which is 40 years.
It's just so great to see you. And oh my gosh,
thank you for all the inspiration and all of
completely going back to 1981.
Well, let's see. I went to 7th grade in 93-4.
Okay.
So it would have been right before you came to Seattle. Because Motzi, I was born in 74, so somewhere between 84 and 85 would have been all the camping trips.
Okay.
And Pippin, which again, Pippin launched my entire theatrical career, that particular production of Pippin. And I still haven't done Pippin, but boy, I listen to music all the time. And the William Catt production. That's the one I still have to watch and listen to all the time. But yeah, Corner of the Sky was a major, I still play it upstairs.
Yeah.
Not well, but I play it. Michael, thank you so much for letting me have you on. I really, really appreciate it.
For sure. All the best.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to Go to Your Room and Make Stuff, the podcast for artists of any kind who want to make art by themselves. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast in all the places where you find podcasts. Find us on social media. And if you ever have any artists you would like to see featured, please let us know. Now, go to your room and make stuff.